The owner pays a progress payment, and that's the best time for the inspector to go and have a look. We always make it our company, we ensure that we write a letter to the builder right when we're appointed and let the builder know that we've been appointed. I like to work with the industry rather than against it. You don't have to hide behind trees. At the end of the day, if it's wrong, it's wrong, and if you're correct in your analogy, then the builder will fix it.
So have you had instances where builders have not been overly keen to have someone else come and look at their work?
Oh yes, builders get pretty upset when an unqualified person particularly is looking at the work. The one problem we have, and it's not only in South Australia but all over Australia, for some unknown reason, and I've been campaigning for many years to have it changed, but building consultants don't have to be licensed, and in fact they don't have to do anything, just put up a shingle. So builders get upset when an expert comes along and he doesn't hold any sort of a license, telling the licensed person what to do. And the strength in a building consultant, and a good building consultant, is not whether he has a license, I guess, but his knowledge. And if what he writes down is correct and not a guess, well then you're okay. But the best way to ensure that you've got a consultant who knows his business, or an expert that knows his business, is to make sure firstly that they have got professional indemnity insurance, and you ask the question, who is it with? What is the policy number? A consultant who hasn't got it, it's because the insurers don't think he's qualified enough. And you find out what the qualifications are and you ask. You ring Consumer Affairs, they give you a list of people who are qualified. That's very important, because another building dispute that does occur occasionally that I get involved in is where a consultant has inspected a property and he's just so far away from it that he just doesn't understand what he's looking at. It's very important that the consultant doesn't put his own views in, but he puts the views in of the building rules and makes sure that that's what the building complies with. It is not what you, I as Peter Jankovic, want on my own house. It is what is required. So it's very important to do that. And the other thing is too, a lot of people ask me, can we hold back money from the builder because you've found a few things wrong? Well, you can't, and consultants should never ever tell an owner not to pay monies. The problem with that is that it puts you in a building dispute straight away with your builder, and you are then in breach of contract for not paying. And then you're in real strife. Most of the contracts will say substantial completion instead of completion. So the second fix is substantially completed, or the wall frame substantially completed. So that doesn't mean that it's got to be 100%. I've made it a rule with the chap that works for me and myself that when we go out on a site, if we see a site that's got a lot of problems, I generally will call the builder. I've let him know that I'm coming anyway, but I'll call the builder or the supervisor, ask him to meet me on site, go over the problems, and suggest to them that perhaps they should fix those up and I'll come back again, rather than write a 30-page report and my client feel that they've got a real bad builder on their hands. Because they might not, it might have just been one job. Yeah. Okay.
So Peter, what do people do when there is a dispute?
Well, every building contract has clauses in it in regards to what happens when the parties are apart and they're starting to argue and they're not getting anywhere. Most of the contracts, I mean, first thing, you can go to Consumer Affairs and talk to Akbar, but and they'll, as I said, they will straight away say to you, well, look, if you've got a problem that you're concerned about, that you don't think things are right, go and get an expert to have a look. But your contract really, where you go to, is you go to back to the builder, and you're not communicating. So in the contract, there is a mediation clause, and there is a dispute resolution clause, and there's an arbitration clause. The mediation clause is fairly simple. It usually costs about $400 plus GST, and what that does is it brings the parties together with a mediator so that you can communicate, because that's generally what you're not doing, you're not communicating. So you communicate, and usually that process, the ones I've been involved in as a mediator, they take 2 or 3 hours, and usually the parties go away shaking hands and they're pretty happy, they've settled their differences. It's far better than some people will go straight and go and see a lawyer, or even for that matter go and see a consultant. It is there in your contract. I tell people it's very important to use your contract. If you have a problem, use your contract. That's what you signed it for. There's things in there to protect you and the builder.
And this is going back to what you said before, really understanding what's in that contract.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If the mediation fails, because the mediation is getting the parties together, so they can. The mediator doesn't say, "Hey, this is what you've got to do." The mediator helps you work it out yourselves. If that doesn't work, there's dispute resolution, where you actually go to an independent party. Again, that cost is $400 initially, but can blow out, because the dispute resolution officer, he is allowed to, what he does is he takes evidence, then he's allowed to go to the building site and have a look at it, he's allowed to get experts involved, and then he makes a finding, and that could cost anything up to $2,000. Okay, but it is better than going to court. All right, it's better than going to a solicitor initially. For all the solicitors that will throw something at me for saying that. And then if that doesn't work, well, then you're in the hands. You've got real problems, and you're in the hands of solicitors, and you can either go and do an arbitration in accordance with the contract, or go to court. And things have got to be pretty bad by the time you get there. So use the contract, go to the mediation process. It is the best way, and usually resolves most of the differences. I find that a lot of the mediations go very well, and there's no more problems after that.
Peter, you're painting a pretty bleak picture of the whole building process. What's the real situation out there, though?
Oh heavens, look, I often get asked, who's a good builder, who's a bad builder, or who's a good contractor, who's a bad contractor, and my answer is, it's pretty hard for me to say. Number one, I don't want to, and the other is that I only get to meet the bad ones. But that's not exactly right. There are some very good builders out there. In fact, most of the builders are very, very good. I always measure builders not by what they get wrong, but what they do when they get it wrong. That's very, very important. The building industry is a really good industry, really, and most of the builders are very, very good, excellent in their work. In fact, it's well known that South Australia builds some of the best houses in Australia in quality. So it's not doom and gloom. It's certainly not doom and gloom. I should also point out as well, we have protection here for consumers that when they sign a contract, that every contract that's worth over $12,000 and has to be council approved or approved by the approving authority, because we have councils and private certifiers in the industry, that they must take out an indemnity insurance policy. It's a consumer protection policy, and it's valued at $80,000. So what occurs is that if something happens to the builder, I have one that I'm investigating at the moment for the warranty insurers, where the builder died, passed away. The owners are covered, that provided they've paid their money in accordance with the contract, they're covered for any extra costs to finish that building work up to $80,000. They still have to pay out the money they own, but they're covered for another $80,000. And that policy goes on also if a death or a disappearance of a builder or bankruptcy occurs during the construction period and during the statutory warranty period of 5 years. Good. So there's a good protection there as well.
Peter, the building industry is a good industry, but what are some of the horror stories that you've seen?
Oh, it's a difficult question, because I've seen a lot of them since 1989. If I think back, probably I think firstly on one I'm working at the moment, where, and it all goes back to supervision again, as I said, where the owners have been living in the house for 6 months, and the winter rains came in, and all of a sudden the garage is flooded, the back of the house is flooded, and everyone's trying to work out why and where the water's coming from. It turns out that on the boundary there should have been a concrete wall poured with the footing to the height of the top of the retaining wall on the adjoining property, which is around about 700mm high, about so high. And that wall wasn't there. They simply put brickwork up, and of course when it rained the water started coming in and had nowhere else to go but inside. So now to fix that up, you need to support the roof, you need to support the walls, you need to chop into the walls that are there, and then you need to build the concrete wall again, and that's got to be joined with proprietary materials so it won't leak, and it's a massive amount of dollars and cents, plus there's all the damage to the carpets, damage to skirtings, damage architraves, doors, and some furnishings, furniture that was in there. And the same house, completely separate from the water that was coming in from the garage and the adjoining wall. The bathroom the laundry and the ensuite floors seemed to be very excessively damp, and what we discovered there was that the breaching sets, the taps, the breaching sets were leaking in the taps in one of the showers and filling up the rebate to which the wet areas were constructed on. So we have door jambs and doors and walls that are doing all sorts of things. So the cost of rectification on that house is great, and the owners are absolutely beside themselves. They're not sure whether they'd want to live there. The house will be fixed properly under our supervision, but that's one of the horror stories. I've seen a lot. The building near the coast is always a beauty. The amount of balconies that I see leaking, a particular builder that I've been involved in looking at some houses for him, and he had a series of houses with one supervisor where every balcony leaked, and unfortunately being a balcony, it's up on the second floor, and wetting everything up underneath. So living areas underneath, you've got furniture getting damaged, you've got walls getting damaged, studs getting damaged, bottom plates rotting out, and to pull it all apart, you've got rooms that are blocked off. You have to block off the area so you can work in there. Particularly, usually that type of leaking is in the winter months, so you have to put up boarding to stop that weather getting in, and in some cases the owners have got to move out of the house. The other horror story is fire, where the building, things haven't been done properly in the building, i.e. smoke detectors, sorry, i.e. downlights in the ceilings. People tend to have a lot of downlights in their ceilings nowadays. I've seen some houses with 12 lights just in one room, downlights, and with insulation sitting on top of the downlights and other things. They overheat, and nowadays we must put a cover on them. There's new regulations for the last 12 months now, but the downlight's overheating and the house actually burning down. There's been a lot of instances of that, and I've investigated a couple. Another horror story was a collapse of a building in Ordinga that I went to. I got a phone call early in the morning when I come down at 5 o'clock in the morning. A building, two-storey building, under construction. It had the wall frames up, the floor up, and the upper wall frames up, the roof up, no cover. And during the night, at about 5 o'clock in the morning, there was a windstorm came through, and the whole lot just twisted and fell down and collapsed. And so I was looking at a single-storey house. And that happened because the supervisor had chosen to put in the braces, and at the front of the building was a lot of braces, a lot of sheet braces, which acted as a sail, and down she went. And what should have happened was there should have been temporary braces there. Had it happened during the day, somebody would have died. Had somebody been on site illegally, maybe even sleeping there overnight, they would have died. And that goes, proper supervision tells you that you must brace it correctly. And supervisors get a harder job nowadays because they not only have to look at that sort of thing, but nowadays, of course, everything we do has to be scaffolded just about. And we're getting to the stage now where single-storey buildings, hopefully not, are going to have to be scaffolded all the way around as well. And you'll see it now where people are working with scaffold and fall protection on single-storey roofs. So I also saw a timber frame house, two-storey, where the bricklayers were working there, and that came down on Homebush Island. I investigated that for the insurers to find out what caused it, and that was actually faulty materials. There was a timber company, I won't mention any names, but a timber company that's not there anymore, that was bringing out timbers, allowing it for use in housing, and the timbers were almost like balsa wood. I was able to hold a stud in my outstretched hand and just hold it up. It was so light. And that building in a severe gust came down, and again, lucky it didn't come down during construction when people were working there, and even more lucky that the house wasn't finished and people were living in it. So just trying to think, there's a lot of them. Bathrooms. The leaking damage that a bathroom can do to a house is immense, and often when it happens 18 months down the track. You can't get the tiles anymore. You've got floor-to-ceiling tiles, and they've all got to be replaced. So the whole bathroom's got to be gutted. There's another horror story there, and usually it's been wet for a while, and the bottom stud timbers have been affected. So you've either got to treat them with an anti-fungi or replace them, depending on whether they're weak or not.
So Peter, just to summarise, what would be an important take-home message for our viewers?
It's important to make sure that the contract is correct, that you've got a proper contract. It's important to ensure you know what you're going to pay It's important, if you're not sure, to hire someone, an expert, to do stage inspections on the building so that you've got peace of mind. And good communication with the builder is very, very important. Talk to your builder. A lot of people just don't.
Great. Well, look, thanks so much for that, Peter.
Thank you.
So always know what you're signing. Always maintain good communication lines with the builder. And if you're unsure of the process that needs to be followed during the construction process, it's probably a good idea to engage someone who does. This almost concludes our program. In the beginning, we mentioned that property development is about following a systemised process. As well as offering an insight into the world of property development, this program is really about letting you know that professionals do exist that can help and guide you, and that using such professionals can be of immense benefit. In part of the package that you've received, you'll find 3 sheets of business card holders. Use them. Use them and fill them up with the details of the professionals that can help you along your journey. If at any stage you find that any of these business cards don't serve you anymore, then remove them and replace them with business cards that can. Eventually, these business card holders will prove to be one of your most valuable tools in property development. If there's one final parting piece of advice that I can give, it's this: never give up. Never give up. In property development, problems will come up. Just come to terms with the fact that problems will come up. When problems come up, it doesn't mean that you failed, it just means that there's something else to learn. And the more you learn, the more you grow. And the more you grow, so does your capacity to generate wealth. I won't wish you luck, because your successes will have very little to do with luck. But I will wish you all the very best and trust that one day I will hear about your successes.